Hello and welcome, and a very happy new year to you. I am Ladi Akiridoluale. Tonight, President Buhari addresses Nigerians on New Year's Day, reads riot act to masterminds of fuel crisis in the country, and kicks against politics of religion and ethnicity, as well as the calls for restructuring. Nigerians usher in 2018 with prayers, goodwill messages, and colorful fireworks display in parts of the country. Bleak New Year celebrations for some indigenes of Rivers and Kaduna states as attacks by gunmen leave 18 persons dead in 2 communities in both states. And more protests break out in Iran for a 5th day as President Hassan Rouhani vows to crack down on lawbreakers.
Happy New Year. On Business Tonight, economist Bismarck Rouhani reacts to President Muhammadu Buhari's New Year broadcast, proposes holistic approach to infrastructure development.
Happy New Year. And on sports news, Manchester United, Liverpool, Leicester and Newcastle record victories in the English Premier League New Year Day fixtures.
And a Happy New Year from Abuja. Religious leaders in Abuja ask Nigerians to be positive about the future and challenge government to address the plight of citizens.
We begin tonight with the President's condemnation of the action of oil marketers in the fuel scarcity saga, describing it as unacceptable and a collective blackmail aimed at inflicting suffering on innocent Nigerians. President Muhammadu Buhari, in his New Year broadcast today, which lasted for about 25 minutes, also affirmed his government's determination to improve on power distribution and generation. The President said he is satisfied with efforts to stabilize the economy, while also acknowledging the role of the armed forces in securing the country's territorial integrity and in the defeat of Boko Haram.
This year promises to be far better in our quest for change.
It's the first official assignment of the President as he interfaces with Nigerians on his agenda for 2018. He begins his broadcast by sending a strong message to oil marketers, who he says inflicted severe pains on innocent Nigerians, as many could not travel to celebrate with their loved ones during the Christmas season.
I am determined to get to the root of this collective blackmail of all Nigerians and ensure that whatever groups are behind this manipulated hardship will be prevented from doing so again.
Developing infrastructure in 2018 will be a key agenda of the President as railway projects cutting across the country are being initiated to boost transportation. The economy also remains a priority for the President, and he is pleased with the progress made so far in some aspects.
The relative exchange rate stability has improved manufacturing sector performance. We have got to get used to discipline and direction in economic management. 2 years ago, I appealed to people to go back to the land. I am highly gratified that agriculture has picked up, contributing to the government's effort to restructure the economy. Rice imports will stop this year.
Although much has been done by his government to boost power supply, the President is pledging to redouble efforts in that sector.
We are going to make significant inroads in advancing road, rail, and power projects across the country. The Ministry of Power, Works and Housing is one of the drivers of this government's commitment to renew and increase Nigeria's stock of infrastructure in order to achieve global economic competitiveness as targeted under the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan.
While affirming that his government is open to new ideas, President Buhari insists that the call for restructuring of the nation would not address the challenges Nigeria faces, which according to him have more to do with process rather than structure.
I have kept a close watch on the ongoing debate about restructuring, in quote. No human law or edifice is perfect. Whatever structure we develop must periodically be perfected according to changing circumstances and the country's socio-economic developments. We Nigerians can be very impatient and want to improve our conditions faster than may be possible, considering our resources and capabilities. When all the aggregates of nationwide opinions are considered, my firm view is that our problems are more to do with process than structure.
The president then concludes his broadcast by thanking Nigerians who prayed for him during his illness last year and hailed the armed forces for defeating Boko Haram. He did not leave out the Niger Delta leaders and others for commendation for ensuring that the region is relatively peaceful, even as his government continues to engage them on the various developmental issues in the area.
Meanwhile, the main opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, disagrees with some of the content of the president's New Year broadcast, saying it completely failed to address serious economic and security issues confronting the nation. A statement by the party's National Publicity Secretary, Mr. Kola Ologbodinyo, says, quote, instead of inspiring the people, the address ended up depressing and annoying them the more, as it held no message and did not prefer any solutions to the problems inflicted by the APC federal government, end of quote. Mr. Ologbodinyo explains that the president's speech did not prefer a clear-cut solution to the acute fuel crisis bedeviling the nation today. The PDP is also challenging the president and his political party to tell Nigerians which landmark project it has initiated, articulated and executed in its close to 3 years in governance. Now let's get some more perspective on the broadcast by the president, and I'm being joined live from our Abuja studios by legal practitioner Mr. Daniel Bwalya. Good evening, Mr. Buhari, and thank you for joining us. Happy New Year.
Wish you the same. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, the president talked about, amongst other things, he talked about reducing the cost of governance. And some people have asked the question, can he really be talking about reducing the cost of governance when he's just appointed, some say up to 100 chairmen and members of boards of federal parastatals, agencies and departments? How do you square this up?
Right. Well, thank you for having me. I think that if you want to reduce the cost of governance, to be honest, the best way is to restructure. And when you devolve powers to the state, then you have less power at the center and you have less responsibility at the center. But as long as we continue in this trajectory, I don't think it is possible for us to reduce the cost of governance. However, the opinion I've always had is that a board appointment is not equal to cabinet appointment, because all of the appointments regarding the boards are non-executive appointments. They are not going to actively be involved in economic development. But
they will get paid, wouldn't they?
Main crux of the matter.
They will get paid.
I'm surprised. Actually, I thought that in the news today. Go ahead.
They will get paid, wouldn't they? They will get paid. And since we're talking about cost of governance.
You know, but then you have to forgive him for that, because based on the economic recovery growth plan of the government, we're just getting out of recession, and it seems that the economy is bouncing back. And don't forget also that the president was accused by the opposition, and then rightfully so by some Nigerians, and over the last 2 to 3 years, he was not able to appoint people into the various boards. And some of the agencies, ministries or departments of the government have not been able to function effectively and optimally because the boards were not constituted. So you cannot blame him for that. I don't think there is a problem with the appointment of people into the board. What I look forward to seeing is the president rejigging the cabinet. A lot of ministers are redundant, they are ineffective, and some of the ministers are also overwhelmed in their ministries. Then what happens to the issue of decompression of some of the ministries? He talked about power, and he talked about transport. These are two ministries. These are six, actually 8 ministries subsumed into 2. And he promised that he is going to decompress it, thereby giving it opportunity for effective people who are probably technocrats to handle this responsibility. Some of the ministers are overwhelmed, some are redundant, very few of them are effective. And even in football match, to be honest, after halftime, you have to re-strategize. You change players. The whole idea is that you are re-strategizing in order to win. We are getting to the 75 minutes of the match. This is the 3rd year. And 2018 is actually a year that every government will be in her best behavior. So nothing should be, we are not expecting anything less than the rejigging of the cabinet in the shortest period of time. And some of the projects that you know was evidenced in his speech today, we hope that Fiscal Responsibility Commission, EFCC, and other relevant agencies of the government will stand on their toes to ensure that the project of the government is duly executed. We don't go back to the issue of corruption again.
Now, earlier you did allude to the issue of what you would like to see being restructuring. What the president said on that was that he didn't see the actual need for restructuring. What he saw was that there was a need for improvement of the process, as opposed to what advocates of restructuring talk about, which is the whole structure itself needing to be rejigged. How do you react to that?
With the greatest respect to the president, in my opinion, I do not think the president quite appreciates the concept of restructuring. Probably the president assumes that restructuring means balkanizing the nation. But restructuring is much more than that. And we've had a wider conversation across board. It is time for us to start talking about it. Maybe what the president ought to have done would have been to give it the opportunity for us to start the conversation. Definitely, we are going to arrive at a point when it will be obvious to everyone that the government at the center is bloated and there is need for powers to be devolved to the state and to the local government so as to see efficiency. The truth of the matter is that the system of government we are running now, we've been doing that over time, and it is not effective. We are progressing, but it is not effective. So the president's comment must have been premised on the understanding that restructuring is calling for the, probably separation of the government or, balkanizing the nation. But that is actually not the case. If you permit me, there is one important thing I want to mention today. Late last year, the Federal Executive Council approved the reconstruction of Gombe-Biu Road because there is an army university that is proposed to be established there. You have access to power plant as well as access to agricultural products along that axis. In the speech of the president today, there is no mention of that project. So what we don't know is whether that has now been abandoned, even though last year it was unanimously agreed by the Federal Executive Council to undertake that project.
All right, then. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Buhari. Thank you so much for joining us from our studios in Abuja. In part 2, after the break, more New Year messages as Christian leaders and other faithful offer prayers for the year 2018. Please stay on with us.